Hey everybody, my name is Daniel, and this is why I gave Dr. Sleep an A. Dr. Sleep is the sequel to The Shining, not only Stephen King's book, but also Stanley Kubrick's movie, and it's about Danny, the son from the first film, and how he's managing his trauma, his childhood memories, his repression, in not so healthy ways, mainly alcoholism. So as he moves to another town and tries to recover, he meets a teenager named Abra, who can also shine, who also has these weird psychic powers like he does, and she is more powerful than any other person that can do this. She lets him know about the true knot. This is a cult of people who shine that are hunting other people who shine, not just murdering them, but consuming their essence, their spirit, in order to remain immortal forever. And they team up, they're battling against the leader of the true knot, Rose the Hat, and they're basically trying to stop them from killing all the rest of their kind. So, a quick history. This movie is directed by Mike Flanagan, who directed Oculus, Hush, Before I Wake, and Ouija Origin of Evil, movies which I don't like. I think Ouija Origin of Evil and Before I Wake are okay, but they're still not recommendable to me. I know he did Haunting of Hill House, and I know he did Gerald's Game, which are critically lauded. I haven't seen those yet. Mike Flanagan before this was kind of hitting a zero for me, and the trailers didn't look much better. I really wasn't into the whole, like, action, sci-fi, slight superhero bent that this was going for. It felt a little bit too much like Logan, but something about this one completely works, and I want to say it's the characters. You know, the way that Ewan McGregor plays Danny, Kyliegh Curran plays Abra, and Rose the Hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson, just, these characters are so whole and complete, and they work. Regardless of where the movie goes, regardless of how slow the movie takes in order to build up these people, or how crazy it can get with the special effects and the horror, I want to follow these characters. I love just looking through their lives and figuring out where the story's going next, and so because the characters are so well made, the movie can go wild, and it really works. I just love that McGregor is playing this truly broken man. This guy's been suffering since his childhood, and it's slowly, as of now, you see him at rock bottom, and what's great about this film is that it doesn't, you know, say, oh, he's at rock bottom and he recovers quickly. No, you see him climbing the ladder. You see him really struggling with his alcoholism. You see him slowly building his life up one moment at a time, and that felt honest to me, and that felt real, and I love how McGregor is vulnerable through all of that. And then you introduce Abra, played by Kyliegh Curran, into this, and she just is a spitfire. This is a character who is headstrong and fierce and just good at heart. She very much feels like, kind of like Scrappy Doo and Robin, but like actually good at her job. She's got that energy to want to do good in the world, to want to use her powers and let herself shine, but in a way to not like kind of scare off her parents who are just normal people. But when you introduce her into the movie as kind of Danny's pseudo-protege, they work so well off each other, and I can't, like, my eyes are glued to the screen whenever any one of them are on screen. And then you've got Rose the Hat. Oh my god, Rebecca Ferguson has just made a villain for the books. And, of course, you've got a horror villain who's ruthless, you've got a horror villain who's creepy and who can send chills up your spine, but something I loved about her is that I found so much tenderness, and I did find a lot of warmth in this character. You get to know somebody who is a villain purely based off choice. Like, you look at Danny, you look at her, and you don't really see them that far off. Now, I'm not talking about, like, this is gonna be a Marvel movie with Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket where they're, like, fighting evil versions of themselves. It's not like that, but I just felt like she wasn't taken to this one-dimensional villainous character. She really was a human being. This movie doesn't sugarcoat anything. She is a villain. She does horrible things that will disturb you. But there's something about the ideas behind what she's doing that, in theory, I could kind of jive with. I can understand that if you're trying to consume somebody to stay alive forever, you know, who doesn't want to stay alive forever? that fear of death kind of permeates throughout this movie, and that's one of the themes that goes along, not only just with her character, but you've got people like Danny who are very much struggling with his life and being able to access the afterlife, to be able to see these ghosts and spirit. Like, how does somebody who's living in this world who can experience the next world, how do you translate that to other people? This movie addresses all of that. And I know I'm kind of going on about like the supernatural, heady mumbo jumbo, but that's kind of what the movie's going with. And like I said, the character work is so strong that Flanagan can just go buck wild with it. I love the cinematography. It feels like you're floating constantly over the whole world. It feels ethereal. It plays a lot with these fantastic setups. There's like, anytime you get to see inside someone's mind, it is just a feast for the eyes. And the CGI and practical effects really work. They balance each other out, which is exactly what they should do. There's some stuff that works for like the really big, kind of crazy, heady stuff. And then when the movie gets like gory and really messed up, it's used just in the right amount, just to the right effect. And you're like, oh God, like it really hits. It really stuns you. Just like The Shining wasn't your typical horror movie, this is not your typical horror film. The genre bending is to 11, and the movie is not there to simply like give you little nuggets of plot before it leads you to another tense moment and a jump scare. The horror really comes from the dangers that our characters feel, the dangers in their heads. There's a part in this movie that is not intended to be like a jump scare scary thing with Ewan McGregor. He's alone in his apartment and he's about to make a decision, and that decision scared me. Because I care about him so much throughout this movie that when you see that decision placed before him, I really started to feel for him, and I didn't want him to suffer any more than he'd already had. I know I've been talking about McGregor, Curran, and Ferguson, but I also want to shout out a lot of the supporting cast. I love Cliff Curtis in this. Cliff Curtis has been solid for years. He plays Danny's best friend / like mentor through his recovery. And that guy, he's not in a lot of the movie, but by God, you grow to love this dude. And this dude just is a nice counterbalance whenever Danny is slowly trying to open up to him. I also love Zahn McClarnon, who is playing Rebecca Ferguson's right-hand dude. That guy has a scene in a car where the light is just perfect on his face, and that is the creepiest thing. That dude is so just arresting, visually arresting. You look at his eyes and you just can't take your eyes off this dude. He's so tense and weird, and I love him. The movie also has a couple of actors from other Mike Flanagan movies, so if you're a fan of this dude, I won't tell all of them because they were a surprise to me, so I want them to be a surprise to you. I need you to get your Easter eggs too, right? I'm gonna go into a little bit of spoilers here, so if you want to hear me wrap up, go ahead and skip to this time code, but I want to talk about something that definitely requires me going in to the movie, you know? The title. I always focus on that whenever I watch movies, just to see how the title encompasses everything. So Dr. Sleep, the nickname that one of the patients gives Danny whenever he's at the hospice and he's kind of leading people into the afterlife. And this, I mean, just the way these scenes play out really kind of made me tear up. It's the way that I want to go. It's that feeling that despite the fact that we're so scared of death, Danny describes it like it's sleep. Have you ever heard of the phrase, sleep is the cousin of death? I heard it on Good Kid, Mad City once, but I think because sleep is a state where we lose all consciousness, it's sort of like a mini death. We die for about like 8 to 10 or whatever hours you're asleep. And, you know, people die in their sleep. It's a natural process. But why are we so afraid of death and not afraid of sleep? In fact, some of us wish we had more sleep. The paradox that runs through this, I think, runs through the entire movie, where the true knot are people that are trying so hard to escape death that they will immediately cut down the life of another. And I feel like that disturbs the natural order in some way. Whenever they die, the true knot, they call it cycling. So there's this theme that everything kind of goes the way it should go. whenever they're at the church, Danny's listening to the preacher, and I think it's like, give me the knowledge to know what I can and can't control, and then give me the wisdom to discern what I should do with those actions. Something like that. There's this idea that the world has its way of turning, and if you're trying to rail so hard against it that, I don't know if it's God, I don't know if it's a force or the karma system, but it's gonna come around to bite you. And so I think this movie is partially about learning how to reconcile the sins of the past with something of the future. That you have been hurt so much in the past that you have to actively work to recover and take responsibility for yourself and not destroy yourself with terrible coping mechanisms, whether it be just running away from everything or drinking the bottle, you know? And I love how that works, and I love how Danny is the doctor. He's the one that's kind of comforting these people. He's healing them, not physically, but just emotionally and mentally, readying themselves, putting themselves back into the balance of how things should be so they die peacefully. And that, to me, is I think what the title's leaning towards too. It's a movie about kind of accepting the way life should go and taking responsibility for yourself and being a doctor for yourself. You're healing yourself from the pain that you've been suffering. You're trying to get back to the way that things should be. Whenever Danny's finally taking responsibility for himself and at a stage in his life where he can now start to take responsibility for others, I felt this sense of pride. And I was really happy for him. I mean, the scenes when he's at the bar facing his dad, like, it's so cathartic as a son, but you get this kind of Jesus tempted by the devil kind of thing that's going on too, and it made me so happy to see Danny, as hurt and as pained as he is, basically fight off this urge. He says, no, I'm not going to go down this path anymore. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to be responsible for myself. And that's the stuff that makes me tear up. I just love that this movie is constantly on like the right side of where you should be as a person, despite all the crazy stuff. I mean, when Jacob Tremblay gets cut up by these people, that is horrifying. This movie doesn't skimp on the evil in the world, it just lets you know where you should be, how you should behave, how you should respond to the pain and misery that's in the world. And that, to me, it kind of rocked me. It really sent me reeling and really moved me in a way that I haven't felt that often this year. So Dr. Sleep, fantastic movie. I hope you don't get thrown off by the long runtime. I do definitely think it's important. And if you haven't seen The Shining before this, I would definitely recommend you go see it. Just so you really understand where this character is starting from, and you feel it deep in your bones. If you feel that pain and that trauma that he suffered from the first movie deep in your bones, I think you're going to be really locked in with Danny and want to follow him to the ends of the earth. And whenever I did that, that really made the emotional moments, that made his arc in this movie so much stronger because I knew where he had been. So watch Dr. Sleep, watch The Shining beforehand, and just kind of let yourself go on a character journey. This is a movie, it's weird. Google, when I looked this up, it said what type of movie this was, and it said recovery. Instead of horror, instead of thriller, it said recovery. And I thought it was weird at the time, but now it feels so appropriate. Dr. Sleep is a movie not about what The Shining was, which is the father descending into madness. This one is about the son escaping from madness. And that, to me, it's the perfect coda to the horror of the first movie, and I definitely cannot recommend it enough. So that's my time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've stuck around. If you have, I greatly appreciate you. Please consider subscribing to the channel to keep hanging out with me, talking about movies, all that good stuff. But right now, it is time for you to choose your own adventure between one of these videos. On the left, you've got my review of Countdown, a horror movie which is not as great as Dr. Sleep, but I still kind of liked it. And on the right, you've got my Fancast for the X-Men in the MCU, where I teamed up with Subjective Cinema. So, you've got a decision to make, choose your adventure, and I will see y'all next time.